Story 1. Mute Visitor. I bought the doorbell cam after a break-in 2 blocks over. My neighbor, Jason, had come home to find his back door wide open. They stole his laptop, some jewelry, and even his dog. The police were quick to respond, but they never found any evidence. I figured it was just a random act of crime, but after a few weeks of paranoia, I decided to install a Ring doorbell to make myself feel safer. For the first few weeks, it was just routine notifications, package deliveries, occasional visits from neighbors, and the occasional car passing by. But one night, around 11 p.m., the notification popped up. Motion detected at your front door. I opened the app, expecting to see the usual car that always parked outside. Instead, I saw something I wasn't prepared for. A figure stood directly in front of my door, just out of the reach of the porch light. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone lingering, waiting for a ride. But as I looked closer, I saw that this figure was standing completely still, staring at my door. There was something wrong about it. I could barely make out any details in the dim light, but I saw enough to know that this person wasn't normal. They stood too still, too rigid, and their outlines seemed to blend into the shadows, like they were becoming part of the darkness around them. It was as though they didn't want to be seen, yet here they were, right in front of my house. I hesitated, watching them, my heart racing. I was tempted to open the door and confront them, but I knew that would be foolish. So, I did what anyone would do in my position. I spoke through the doorbell speaker. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice wavering. No response. Just silence. I spoke again, my tone firmer this time. "Are you looking for someone?" Still nothing. At this point, I was starting to get really uncomfortable. I watched as the figure slowly reached into their jacket, pulling something out. I couldn't see what it was, but it was enough to make my pulse quicken. The figure held whatever it was in their hand, inspecting it for what felt like an eternity. It seemed to be some kind of tool, but I couldn't make it out clearly. For what felt like 10 minutes, they stood there without moving a muscle. Then, the figure slowly raised its hand and pressed the doorbell. I froze. What the hell was going on? The doorbell chimed, and my phone screen lit up with a familiar notification sound. I checked the app again, but there was no new image. The person had completely disappeared from the feed. The doorbell's light went off, and the motion detector turned off, as if the presence had vanished. I didn't know what to think. Was this some kind of prank? Was it someone trying to scare me? Or had I missed something? The next morning, I checked the footage. Everything looked the same, but then something caught my eye. I replayed the video, zooming in on the figure, and realized something I hadn't noticed before their shadow. It wasn't cast in the direction of the porch light. It was stretching backward into the dark yard, as if they were standing far away from the door, despite being clearly visible in front of it. My heart dropped. The person had been standing too far back for that to be possible. I checked with my neighbors. No one had seen anything unusual, and there hadn't been any reports of strange activity. But that evening, when I got the motion alert again, I knew something wasn't right. I ran to the window, pulled back the blinds, and looked outside. Nothing. The street was empty. But the next night, the doorbell rang again. This time, there was a brief glimpse of movement through the glass. The figure had returned, but they didn't just stand there. They reached out and grabbed a door handle, tugging on it as if they were testing if the door was locked. I rushed to check the app again, but by the time I did, they were gone. The porch light flickered. The cold chill in the air seemed to grow, making the entire room feel like it was being swallowed by darkness. Now, every time I come home, I check the doorbell cam. I'm too scared to sleep without it on, afraid of what I might see. The figure has never come back, but I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there watching. Story 2. Shadow on the porch. I work the night shift at a local hospital. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. I'm used to being awake while the rest of the world sleeps. But the night I had that strange experience, I was more on edge than usual. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the constant night shifts, but what happened that night still haunts me. I came home from work around 2 a.m. My roommate, Tim, was out of town, so I was alone. The apartment was quiet when I entered, and I appreciated the silence after the chaos of the ER. I made some tea and decided to relax for the evening, watching some late-night TV. After a while, I got a notification on my phone. Motion detected at your front door. I checked the app, expecting to see some animal or maybe a delivery truck passing by. But when I pulled up the live feed, my heart sank. There was a figure standing at the edge of the porch, near the stairs. I could barely make out the outline, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. They were standing unnaturally still, just like the first story I'd seen from my doorbell cam. I didn't know what to think. I checked the timestamp. It was 3:45 a.m. Who could be out there at this hour? I thought it was just someone loitering or maybe even a prankster, but as I zoomed in on the footage, I noticed something strange. The figure wasn't just standing still, they were swaying. Not moving forward, not moving backward, but gently swaying, like they were caught in some kind of trance. I tried talking through the speaker, asking if they needed help, but there was no response. Just silence. The figure remained motionless. The longer I stared at the screen, the more I felt a sense of dread fill my chest. Then, without warning, the figure slowly lifted one hand and tapped the door. It wasn't a loud knock. It was a faint tapping sound, like a knuckle rapping against wood. But it was enough to make me freeze. I turned the lights off, hoping they wouldn't notice me watching, but when I checked the feed again, the figure had moved closer to the door. Now, their face was just inches from the camera lens, but the face was a blur, as though the camera couldn't focus on it. I immediately ran to the living room, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't want to make things worse by overreacting. So, I stayed on the phone with my mom until she convinced me to just keep an eye out and lock all the doors. Later, I checked the footage again. This time, the figure was gone. But I didn't feel safe. The sense of being watched didn't leave me. In fact, it's gotten worse over the past few days. Every knock at the door makes my blood run cold. Story 3. The duplicate delivery. I run a small online business, selling rare vinyl records. I had been getting a lot of orders lately, and everything was going smoothly. To keep my packages safe from porch pirates, I installed a doorbell camera to monitor deliveries. It made me feel better about the growing number of packages arriving at my door. One afternoon, I received a notification on my phone. Package delivered. I checked the app, and sure enough, there was the delivery man, placing a box on the front step. I watched the video as he scanned the package, and then he left. I thought nothing of it. The package was from a supplier I ordered from often. But then, just a few minutes later, I got another notification. Duplicate delivery detected. Confused, I opened the feed again. And there, standing at my door, was the same delivery man, with the exact same box. I checked the tracking info. Everything matched. The same delivery number, the same company, the same courier. But now there were 2 packages on my porch, both identical. I went outside, grabbed both boxes, and brought them inside. I thought it was a simple mistake. Maybe they sent me 2 by accident. But when I opened the first box, everything seemed normal. The same records I had ordered, packed neatly inside. I opened the second box to find the same records, but the packaging was different. It wasn't the same tape, and the inside felt off. I pulled out a vinyl record, and on the back, the label was slightly different from the one on the first box. My gut told me something was wrong. I grabbed the phone and checked the delivery footage once more. I paused the video and zoomed in on the delivery man's face. But something didn't seem right. It looked like the same man, but his jacket was slightly different, and in one frame, his hand didn't match up with his body. I realized then that something else was happening. The footage was glitching, or maybe it was duplicating. The delivery man's movements repeated in the video feed, as if it was being played twice. I checked my phone's timestamp and replayed the video. That's when I realized the second delivery wasn't from the same courier. It was a recording of the first delivery. Someone had taken the first footage and overlaid it on top of the live feed, but there was no way they could have gotten inside. The door had been locked, the camera was working, but the footage had been tampered with. I didn't know who was messing with me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me not just through the doorbell cam, but through every corner of my house.